Okay, this is now the Tarot Q&A number 15, and I'd like to make 2 points, which I think are important. Because I was thinking mathematics exists, and mathematics doesn't need us, right? It just is. And I think the tarot is a complete whatever it is, and it doesn't need us. But if we're going to read cards, it's up to us to educate ourselves and to make our understanding bigger and better and wider and more or to aim to be more complete, and then we're going to be able to make more sense of tarot cards. So that's a general idea that I think is correct. So I wanted to do 2 things today, one about astrology and one about somebody I know in Australia. And the first bit about last video or a couple of videos ago, I kind of insulted everybody who's involved in astrology, and I didn't really mean to insult anybody, but I'd like to prove why what I said was correct, that astrology on the internet is rubbish. So I'm kind of being deliberately obnoxious. Okay, so if you look at astrology, I've watched various people on YouTube videos talk about astrology, and what they tend to do is they look at a horoscope and they begin with an aspect, right? You've got they begin with what they think is important because it's an aspect. An aspect is new moon is the sun the same degree as the moon. Full moon, there's an opposition. The moon's opposite the sun, and that's called an aspect. But they'll begin with an aspect, and let's say the aspect indicates insecurity in the native. So they look at the chart and they say, well, you've got this aspect. This is an indication that you're insecure and blah, blah, blah. And they talk and talk and talk about this aspect. But it's out of context. They don't refer it to the native or the questioner or the person whose horoscope it is. So they take the idea of you're insecure, and the person whose chart it is thinks, okay, that's true, I am insecure. So presumably the rest of what the person tells me is correct as well. So they'll take an aspect and they'll think of it as a brick, right? And they'll build a whole house on top of this brick. The only thing is that aspect might be just one part of a 2-foot high wall that's used to divide a field. Or maybe it's a brick that's part of, along with other bricks, to make a path. So when you take an aspect in isolation and don't consider the context, you get it all wrong. So what I think has to be done is you've got the aspect, but you really need to begin with the native, the first house, the ascendant. Its sign, its decanate, its duad, and the planet or planets that are involved with that particular sign and decanate. So that if somebody's born and the first house shows that they're stubborn and pig-headed, you put that together with insecurity, and maybe the insecurity is a good thing because it stops the person becoming a maniac, and a dictator. Whereas if the ascendant shows somebody who's creative and artistic, the insecurity might show that, okay, you're creative, but you have occasional doubts about your ability. And the way to solve the doubts or to deal with the doubts is to look at the planet or planets that rule the ascendant. And so I find that people who call themselves astrologers, and I'd like to mention that William Lilly, if you know William Lilly, from 17th century England, he called himself a student in astrology. He didn't call himself an astrologer, but these people who've read a couple of books think they're astrologers, and they're really not. So, going back to the horoscope spread, that means that the card for the first house is really, really important. And when you turn other cards and look to other areas of life, you really ought to refer back to the house or remind yourself about the card in the first house. So if you've got, let's say, the sun in the first house, you're confident, hopeful, optimistic, relaxed, excited. right? Because it's the sun. And so let's say you get to the 9th house, which is foreign travel, and it looks good. And you say to the person, you ought to take a trip somewhere. If the sun is in the 1st house, you'll say, yes, I agree. Where can I go? I'll go tomorrow. Whereas if you've got the devil reversed or the tower in the 1st house, you're not as optimistic and confident. You're maybe with the devil reversed feeling a bit trapped and maybe unappreciated or unable to move the way that you want to move. So if you get that same good card in the 9th house and you say to the person, you ought to travel. If you've got the devil in the 1st house, you think, probably not. I'll probably lose my luggage or get stuck at customs or there'll be a problem with the passport. It's really not going to go well. They've got a very different attitude to, let's say, foreign travel. If you've got the sun in the 1st house, as opposed to the devil in the 1st house. So when you turn the card for the 1st house, remember it, but do quite a lot with it to understand what kind of person you're dealing with. And the other thing is, a horoscope spread doesn't last forever. So think about the time period you want when you're doing a horoscope spread. The end of the month, next 6 months, a year from now, something like that. And you know that during that period of time that you've specified, the questioner is going to feel more or less like the card in the 1st house, for good or bad, whatever it happens to be. You've got the strengths and weaknesses of the card in the 1st house that you're learning about or you have to deal with over the next few months, or however long the spread you want it to last or describe. The other thing is, I was talking to this fellow in Australia, and he's a businessman, and he's been trying to open up a market for himself and his products in China. And he's had 2 steps forward, 1 step back. He's had a lot of problems and trouble and difficulties, and he's very frustrated because he's not getting where he wants to get. So he said to me at one point, he's been to China and he's done talks and he's met all sorts of people, been to trade shows. And he said, if I never go back to China again, I'll be happy, or something like that. And so we moved on with the conversation. And then I thought afterward, we get back what we give out. So if he is thinking, if I ever go back to China, if I never go back to China, that'll be okay. So what's he sending out? What's he giving out? He's giving out, China, don't come and get me. And so maybe there are people that he's dealt with in the past who are thinking, the time is right, let's get in touch with them and get him back here. And then they think, maybe we won't bother. And because he's been sending out, don't come and get me, it influences in some way, to some extent, the people that he has been dealing with. So we get back what we give out. What is he giving out? So I'm thinking, if each of us, over the course of the next week, monitor our thinking and write it all down and figure out how much time you spend sending out no and negativity, and how much time you spend sending out, yes, life is good, life is full. It's probably like 5% or 2% plus and 98% negative. And then you can wonder, okay, so this is why I called this, what are we really doing to ourselves by the way we think and what we do? So anyway, I thought, instead of him, the businessman, thinking, if I never go back to China, it'll be too soon. Why doesn't he think, the next time I go back to China, I want to be photographed by the local newspaper in Shanghai, wherever it is, because I'm being given a check for $5 million, which is for products that I've sold them. And we've also got a 10-year deal exclusive to them for my products. And the local newspaper is going to be, or the Shanghai newspaper is going to be there, and they're going to photograph it because it's a big deal. That he could send out that, and it may not happen tomorrow or the next day, but at least he's not saying, China, stay away. I don't want anything to do with you. And so he doesn't know how close he is to the end. We generally don't know. So it may be that he needs to take one step and he's arrived. Or maybe he has to take 10 steps before he can arrive. But by sending out, I want to be photographed in Shanghai, that kind of thought, and then doing what comes to mind, he's got a chance of getting it. Whereas putting up, stay away signs, that's wasting probably the effort that he put in already. So I said to him, at the end of the conversation, I said to him, what you do is, or what you could do is, pick a card on what to do next. And he said, okay. And then 2 minutes later, the phone rang and he said, I got the Hermit reversed. What do I do? And I said, okay, the Hermit is isolation and it's upside down. So I said, don't be a hermit. Come out your cave and understand social media and get onto Facebook or whatever it happens. Work with social media, because he'd mentioned that he doesn't understand social media. So learn social media. 40 years ago, the Hermit reverse would have meant probably something like, do an advertising campaign, become known. Don't hide yourself away and isolate yourself. Get out there and let people know that you exist. So nowadays it's social media, YouTube channels, Twitch TV, blogs, newsletters, and all the rest of it. So that I think is, I can't think of what else to say. I think I had some other conclusion, but it's gone. So with horoscope spreads, pay close attention to the first house, because that really sets the tone for what the person's like and what you can expect of them. And the other houses, or the cards for the other houses, show the context that you're working at, or the questioner is working in. And also for yourself, maybe think about that and let me know what you get. How positive are you in your daily thinking and wondering and asking? And how much are you expecting that it's not going to work? That you're reinforcing things that have gone wrong? Maybe because you think you're being realistic, but are you? Because the title for this video is, what are we really doing to ourselves? Or what are we really doing? Because that's what we're doing, what we think we're doing, what we're really doing. And I think there's a difference between them most of the time. Okay, that's it for the moment. So next I'll endeavor to look at the actual horoscope spread and do some of it. But I mentioned a while ago, I don't know when, years ago, that if you look at the tarot as a journey of exploration. So I too am on a journey of exploration with the tarot. So these things like today and some other things I mentioned, they're kind of what I'm discovering as along the way. And that's why I'm passing this on to you about the horoscope or astrology and the first house, and also about we get back what we give out. Because I think we should, if we're aware of what we're giving out, we're going to be in more control of what we get back. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll be back in a couple of days with more on the actual horoscope spread. Okay, thanks again.